player at my lower league, and he played g6 here. Sensible move. I played knight f3, bishop g7, g3, and finally he grabbed the center. Bishop g2, c5, castles. Having a fianchettoed bishop here makes pawn pushes such as h5 and h4 way less dangerous because this piece is in the way. If black manages, which takes time to castle long and take this rook onto this square, then this piece would be in the way. This is one feature that slows down black's counterattack on the flank, and this pawn is already committed and loses time because maybe you would like to push g5 in one go after h6, g5. So g6 and fianchettoing the bishop is slow if you want to attack on that flank. So this makes me really comfortable castling immediately here. b6, c4 at the right moment can take advantage of this weakened diagonal, but I don't want to play it right away when it doesn't give me anything right away. And I played d3, simply preparing the e4 push at the right moment with queen e1 and e4. Bishop b7 was played. Bishop shouldn't be touched, maybe too early. At the right moment it can go to to a6 at with one go, with one move, kinda stopping my idea of queen e1, e4, because after takes this pawn would be pinned to this rook here. So, but in this deep manner, being able to think in this deep manner needs a lot of experience in working on theory. Bishop b7 was played immediately, it's alright. c3. Well, when the bishop can come to a6, again employing this idea, then c3 could be dangerous for white in some positions, because after exchanging these pawns, let's imagine the queens are not being exchanged or are on any squares on the board, then this square is weak because there is no pawn and there is no pawn to cover that pawn, and the bishop on a6 in conjunction with any other piece like a knight could maybe take advantage of it. If a knight would be hopping into d3, like sometimes in the Bangkok gambit for black, that could be difficult for white, but I don't see it here because this square is covered, which would allow a knight to come there, and this square for the time being, which would allow it as well, is covered as well. But you have to keep it in mind. This is again a deeper idea. Knight d7, queen e1, and now bishop a6 could be played excuse me, to prevent me playing e4, but this loses time. So let's go back, let's take away these arrows. If knight f6 would have been played, queen e1, or sorry, let's play c3 first, and knight c6, queen e1, then bishop a6 is good, and then probably white has to change gears, castles, bishop d2, and if d4 isn't played, well, even if it would be played. The knight comes here, the rook may be here, and then b4. This is the flexibility in this position. So you don't want to give this bishop any activity on this long diagonal, especially after having played c3, because this weakens this square. So you want to keep this pawn here, making this bishop bite on granite. Okay, this is just to make you familiar with the ideas here. Again, let's go back to the game. Queen e1 was played. Black sees that e5 is coming, and maybe Black saw in his mind's eye that a move like knight f6, knight bg2, castles, and e4 now would lead to a position which is rather uncomfortable. White has the center, which is funny because he allowed Black to grab the center in the first place. But this is the nice thing about reactive openings. You can be flexible beforehand, and you have most often the ability to establish a center, especially having white in these reactive openings. And what to play here? I mean, e5 looks ugly, loses a pawn for the moment. Knight g4, and to round up that pawn. But this allows moves such as this, and this looks just a little bit awkward here, doesn't it? If well, if we take this knight here, we can exchange, takes, and check. Well, I would prefer white. So if knight f6 leads to a position which is rather cramped, that makes it understandable maybe why Black felt obliged to undertake something more drastic, but the move he chose really was catastrophic. Queen c7 would be a sensible move in my opinion, but he played f5. This is the kind of move that you will see in your own games against the non-grandmasters. They see the idea and they react wrong to it, you see. And the point is how to take advantage of this wrong approach. Well, you have to think backwards. Where was the piece or the pawn before it moved to this wrong or in this wrong manner? Because it's clear Black has a tempo less in the opening. He needs to play very good and precisely. He needs to develop and castle very fast and not waste time with 1, 2, 3, 4 and then 5 pawn pushes. This is too much for Black. You cannot afford this as Black. Probably you cannot even afford it as White, having a tempo more. So you have to go backwards after, sorry, only one move backwards. So you know that f5 must be wrong, and you go back in your mind's eye and say, what did this piece or this pawn cover? Well, it covered this square, which is not important because it's covered anyway. But it covered e6, a very important square because it's in the heart of Black's camp. And if f5 is played, this square isn't protected anymore. This is the drawback of pawn pushes. And this is why bird's opening is, especially the Leningrad variation with this Leningrad bishop, is a opening of preciseness of the pawn pushes. Well, if this square is weakened and I am free to point at it, I'll do it immediately. And I'm threatening simply to fork queen and bishop. So this is the way to find strong moves. You see a weakness and it's not threatening anything to you, then you go and put your finger on these weaknesses. And the knight has to go to f8 simply to cover that square. Doesn't that look funny? Knight to d2, preparing e4. e5. Well, maybe this player heard that opening up the game is a good idea when you have the bishop pair. Well, I have the bishop pair as well. Well, he has both bishops develop. But his king is in the middle, and the king is the most important factor of a position. Is the king vulnerable, yes or no, in your position? This is the first question that you have to ask yourself. And e5 leads to an invitation to his house, not through the back door, rather through the front door, and black is saying, please kill me. Well, as you command. I played e4 here to exploit this. Well, I could have taken here, but afterwards there is a brick wall. It would be slower to play e4 then. If you have pressure in the center, the principle is not to solve it when it doesn't give you a clear-cut advantage in material or initiative, rather than solving or releasing pressure. You have to maximize it, and this is what the move e4 is all about. I prepared this move. I have these pieces here and here, and that allows me to play e4 without even to think and calculate. Well, of course you have to calculate to go sure, to be sure, but it's correct in 99% of the cases. My king is safe, so there is no piece trapped. h6 will be met by knight f3, so there is every reason to play e4 here. h6 was played, and I dropped my knight back. Well, I like it even more on f3. And now pawns were exchanged, and even a second pawn. Well, this is the wrong approach. This pulls my backward knight into the center and opens up the game even more, and I'm ahead in development. My king is nicely protected. And now see, at this pawn, which I moved very early, if this knight ever takes this pawn, the d4 square is covered and there is no check. Isn't that nice? Well, d5, a queen came to d5, and if I would play really stupidly, then queen could mate on g3, but this idea is covered in my calculations. I took the pawn here, and black thought he was safe after castling long here. But look at the lines which are opened here. The king is not safe at all. These knights are terrifying. And moves such as, well, if I would retreat my knight somewhere, well, I wouldn't, because it stands on a very nice square. But let's say, let's pretend this pawn wouldn't be hanging after knight d7, I would exchange it. Then probably I would maybe consider pushing this pawn, playing bishop f4, and taking advantage of these open diagonals. Maybe this is something you have to keep in the back of your head. Well, white is to move. What would you play? You cannot grab material here. There's no possibility to fork the rooks, unfortunately. Well, I thought about moves such as bishop e3 and rook d1 afterwards. I thought rook f2 and d2 here, but if I play rook to f2, sorry, I have a bad mouse, rook to f2, that would allow queen d1, I thought, at least. And I don't want to exchange pieces, I want to attack. And now I played a move which needs flexibility in flexibility of thought. I played c4. Why would I play c4? Giving up the control of this square, which I just was happy about. Well, I calculated if the queen checks here, bishop e3, c4 is protected, so the pawn here could be taken, and if rook b1, you see I invested a pawn to activate these pieces, and now you see all my pieces are into play in conjunction, well, okay, to these dormant pieces here. And if queen a3, we have the blow bishop c5. In positional advantageous positions for you, you have to look for such tactical shots. And if this is taken, rook b3, decoying the queen, and now check is very strong here. And if king c7, the rook can take. This is nothing you have to calculate too much. It's simply, well, you sacrificed a little material, but you have so many pieces which come into the game immediately, and in conjunction with these dormant pieces, this sacrifice is clear without any calculation. Knight c5 check, king c7, queen e4, and the queen is coming with vicious checks, and the knights are very strong here. So after having played c4, queen d4 check would allow, as I shown you, bishop e3 with tempo. So black retreated here. Well, there's one other plus side to c4. I blocked this pawn, and this allows b4. Very strong. Opening up lines against the king. Not giving black any time to consolidate or to exchange my pieces. Well, black felt obliged to exchange my central pieces for his beautiful bishops. I took this, and he thought that he can take material here. But this allows just to develop my bishop to f4, an even nicer square than e3, cutting out the black king retreat. Well, it turns out that knight c5 is possible too, and if queen takes queen, bishop takes bishop with check, king c7, if king b8, then this is mate, so king c7 would be forced, bishop f4 check, rook d6, bishop takes with check, rook takes queen, and now you see we're a whole rook here. This is easily won. I played bishop f4, developing a piece with tempo. Now check, and I didn't want to retreat this bishop to this less optimal square. I wanted to keep it on this nice diagonal, so I played king h1, and well, now again black started getting desperate, and he took the knight, and this is clearly losing. Look at this ranking bishops. And after that, black even grabbed this pawn here, but this gives me targets, and at some point I can push c5, maybe with a rook beforehand here. But black overlooked a tactical shot here, which I have. Can you spot the move that wins material here for white? It's a nice tactical shot. Please stop the video and think for a minute. The move is bishop e5. The bishop on e5 is immune because of check. Takes winning the queen for 2 bishops. So after bishop e5, this forks queen and rook. Queen came to c5. I took the material. Knight e6 finally developing. And now I thought I have bishops and I want to have an open game, even more open than it is already. So I took this pawn, not for the sake of the pawn, but this pawn controlled f5, and f5 is one of the important squares for me to control the diagonals against the king. Knight g5. I checked the king, and I checked again, even letting my strong bishop being exchanged just for the sake of simplicity, and exchanging pieces just helps me. I'm up a whole rook. King a6, and now I'm activating my pieces. Queen took this pawn. Well, weak players think in material, such as weak engines as well. But now again, please stop the video and think about the strongest move in this position, way ahead in strength than compared to any other move. Okay, the strongest move here is bishop g2. And this is the case because the queen has just taken this pawn, my pawn, helping me to open up fire against the king, or even pinning the queen. Queen g4, attacking my rook, maybe trying anything with the knight, but I think black only sees ghosts here. And now I have a beautiful move finishing this game. You can again pause the video if you want to. And the move, which is really picturesque, is simply defending my rook with queen f1. Check. And now you see how I'm controlling all the squares here, and b5 would of course be met by queen takes b5 mate. So in this position, finally, after queen f1, black resigned. I hope you enjoyed the game. Please comment, share your thoughts, subscribe to the channel, and follow my following recommendations, and I'm going to show you more games in this nice opening. Thanks.